is helpful also. And for some of these teachers, it's been really their first interaction with Muslims. So while they have many of them in their community or their neighborhood, perhaps they haven't interacted very closely. And I think we see that in Spain, that we have a lot of Arabs around us, but that doesn't mean that people are necessarily connecting in terms of friendship. But to see that happen even in our classes or in those spaces, and for Spanish Christians to begin to think about, how do I share my faith with a Muslim, or what does it look like in this friendship to share faith? Yeah, and then we pray that God would use all of our outreach strategies, all of our events. Ultimately, we know it's God's Spirit and it's God working in people's hearts and drawing them to Himself. And so our prayer is that God would also reveal to us those that He's already working in, those that He's already preparing, that are open, that are searching. I just have one more slide. I just have one more slide. I would say one trend that we're noticing in Morocco is that Christians are becoming more visible. So I would say even maybe in the past decades, Christians have been much more hidden, and they still are. You still have a lot of secret believers, or churches are not meeting legally yet, so they're meeting in house churches. But I would say I think we're seeing more Christians that are willing to put their faith out there. We have more Christians that are being seen even in the news. And this is a quote from a secular news source, and it says, it is still unclear when the so-called phenomenon of Moroccans converting to Christianity began to come out of the closet. But one thing is clear: Moroccan Christians are emerging from the shadows. So this was a secular news source, not a Christian source, but just a secular source commenting on. We used to not know there were Christians in our country. Now we're beginning to see that they exist. So this particular pastor, his name is Rashid, and he has a YouTube channel where he regularly shares teaching and preaching. So he's very visible. He's willing to put his faith out there in media. He has received persecution more on the lines, I would say, of neighbors making life difficult for him. So he's had to move homes actually now a couple of times. He's had people throwing rocks at his windows, that kind of thing. And for his kids also in school, it's been difficult as well. So as believers do take these steps to become more visible, there are challenges and there's pushback, especially for those in Morocco. But we pray for Rashid, for people like him that are willing to be bold. And really, a lot of people, through his YouTube channel, a lot of people have been contacting him. So he gets a lot of messages from people that are maybe in more rural areas, that they don't have any kind of a house church in their community, but they write to him looking for discipleship, and he's been able to travel and visit a lot of these people on a pretty regular basis now. So just being public, it has a lot of people that maybe haven't had that space yet. They've been able to contact him. We pray for boldness for believers, and that they would persevere in the midst of challenges. And then I'll just end on the thank you, and I'm grateful for the church, or for how you've been a part over the past 10 years, and even prior, for your support, for your prayers. I don't know if anybody has questions, but I could take it.
What does PMI stand for?
It's now Pueblo en la Misión, so people and mission. It used to be Project Maghreb when it was only the North Africa area, so that whole area is called the Maghreb. But now it's not just in North Africa, it's other places. So it's people's and missions would be the current effort. Yeah.
Do you feel you're in any danger from Muslim leaders?
I personally never felt danger either in Spain or in Morocco. There have been a few cases where I've accompanied women that have been abused by their husbands, for example, and I've gone to the police with them when they were getting ready to make the kind of report. I would say those are the spaces when maybe I felt a little bit more unsafe, just because, if the husband isn't happy, then you don't quite know how to respond. But otherwise I've never felt unsafe. Not everybody is ready to receive the gospel or is open, but I would say, we might get pushed back in terms of, arguments, you know. I feel like a lot of people want to convert me, so, you know, I'm sharing my faith, they're also sharing theirs, you know, I'm hoping they'll convert me. But I've never felt unsafe, I would say. And even in Morocco, I can travel by myself. I always go to visit people, but I travel alone on the trains or public transport, and I've always felt very safe there as well. Yeah, and I would say Morocco is a very welcoming and hospitable country to foreigners. You know, there is a lot of tourism there, and they're happy to receive people from other places. So, yeah.
So you began learning Arabic
Yeah.
years ago, and you're continuing to.
Yeah. I'm still working. I would say I have an intermediate level of Moroccan Arabic. I can understand really well. My speaking, I can get around and get by. I can't say everything that I want to say as much as I would like to. I feel like I'm still working. There's a lot of spiritual vocabulary that you're not going to learn with Muslims, but the Christians use. So I'm still working on a lot of that vocabulary. And then we have different dialects of Arabic too. So Syrians or Middle Easterns have another. So I can understand a lot with them, and still working on improving this.
How about the difference between Spanish of the South Americans that are moving into Spain? Is there any difference in Spanish?
Not a huge difference. There are, I would say, differences in how people conjugate verbs, for example. So Spain uses a more formal sounding Spanish that it could sound like a King James English, you know, sort of. It's more formal in how it sounds, but it's not a huge difference. People can communicate. Yeah, I had to change a few things in my accent. Like, as I'm teaching Spanish, I want to teach immigrants Spain Spanish as much as possible. But not any huge differences, I would say.
Are the evangelical churches in Spain organized? Do they work together in like a conference structure or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say in our city we have about maybe 15 evangelical churches. Most of them, to us, they would seem small. Our church has about 100 people now, and that's on the bigger end already. So most churches are between 60 to about 100, a little over 100. So I think just having a smaller evangelical community, we know we need each other more. You know, the youth groups at each church might be small, so they're encouraged when they get together with youth from other churches. So we've had for a couple years now, all of the evangelical pastors and Granada in our city will meet monthly to pray. And through that, we're seeing a lot more teamwork, working together. I would say 10 years ago when I came to Spain, there was a greater sense of competition, you know, or sheep stealing, and you don't want any of my folks to go to your church. And if we ever meet, they might be tempted. They might see something nice at your church and want to go. But I would say there's less of that fear now, and more of a sense of we need to work together, we need to pray together, and we're stronger if we work together. So my church isn't of a particular denomination. Some churches might have a denominational tie, but I think there's still been a really good partnership, especially in the past few years, of seeing how we can strengthen and encourage one another. We've started having, every year we'll have an evangelical church gathering. So it's really all the churches in our city and even kind of outside of our city, so the whole province. Sometimes people will come, and every time it's a bit more than we expect. So we'll reserve a hotel, you know, with a large meeting hall, and it's always a bit more people coming than we even expected. So it's fun to see that grow in the past few years. Yeah, and I think people are encouraged and wanting to meet, wanting to connect. I just feel like there's more, you know, when it's a bigger group and you feel like there are more, it's encouraging. And for the young people also, just feel like there are more youth with a similar stage. Yeah.
You mentioned at the beginning that Spain is not considered an unreached country because you have 2% in
Yeah.
What's the cutoff to be unreached? And
I think less than 1% is considered unreached. Yeah, although a lot of countries that are unreached are quite a bit less than 1%. Yeah, but that may be the cutoff.
Could you share a little bit about your new role in PMI and what
Yeah.
that's going to look like?
Yeah, so I recently I became the Europe regional coordinator for PMI. So PMI, we have about 40 individuals, missionary individuals, or we have mostly in families, but about 40 individuals that are in Europe, mostly in Spain, and then we have a few in the UK. We have one couple in Birmingham, working mostly with Pakistani immigrants, and then we have one couple also in Italy, but mostly in Spain. And my role is now to be the coordinator for our regions. So some of that, so far it's been more like as we get new workers coming to Europe, some of that is placing them or just even looking through people's profiles, making sure they're a good fit, and then also placing people in certain teams. And then also my new goal for this coming year, we haven't had any kind of gathering for those workers in quite a number of years before COVID. So just getting people together. So PMI always tries to work in teams, so people are part of teams, but getting those teams together also for some training. So it's a relatively new role. Yeah, I just entered the role a couple months ago. But I'm already well connected to the community of PMI workers in Europe, so I feel like there's already a good level of relationship there. But looking forward also to what I'll be able to do this week.
Are Jack and Beth Powell also part of this?
They're not part of Converse, but they have a very similar focus. So they're in Marseille. Yeah, they have a lot of immigrants also in their community, and they're working with similar focus. Yes, I feel like we can learn a lot from one another. Yeah, French is a little bit different, but there's still a lot that's in common.
I'm just wondering how many people in Spain regularly attend a Catholic church?
I would say most Spaniards are pretty nominal Catholics, so it's, everybody, they still celebrate all the big holidays. So Easter week, we have what they call Semana Santa with a lot of the processions, that every day there's maybe 3 or 4 processions that go through the street with Mary with a lot of candles and incense and a band. So also Muslims, when they look at what is Christianity, this is kind of the more visible face of Christianity. It's Mary being paraded through the streets with a whole bunch of candles and incense and kind of a big show. So a lot of outward side that I would say of the Catholic faith, and we have still the beautiful cathedrals all over. But people that are actually practicing faith in terms of attending Mass, very few would attend Mass. Normally it's kind of, the elderly population maybe that still actually practices a bit more. I would say the younger generation, I would say a lot of Spanish young people are agnostic. So they wouldn't say there isn't a God, but there's not a great desire to seek God or to know God, or, religion was more of a thing of our past. And the Catholic Church did a lot of very negative things during Franco. So there was a period of about 40 years where the Catholic Church and the government were very intertwined and did a lot of really negative things for the country, for people. So I think there's, people are, the Catholic faith is still a part of their culture, but most people don't